Hello and welcome. Since liberalization, India has been on a wild growth ride. Think glitzy malls, tech parks, fintech disruptors, and a digital banking system that's the envy of many. Amidst the roaring wheels of development, a less glamorous sector is slowly making its voice heard, and that is waste management. What was once the turf of your friendly neighborhood kabadiwala is now a high-tech, high-stakes industry. With digital platforms, strict protocols, and serious R&D, e-waste recycling has become a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. No wonder venture capitalists are lining up. Leading the charge is Attero. The company registered a staggering 100% year-on-year growth and has already clocked 1,000 crores in revenues this financial year. The company has over 46 global patents to its credit. It handles hundreds of tons of electronic and lithium-ion battery waste. And if the volumes impress you, the deep tech behind it will blow your mind. From SellSmart, a D2C platform that lets consumers sell e-waste from their couch, to Mandi, an AI-powered engine that's changing how businesses manage scrap. Attero is powering India's circular economy. At the heart of it is a founder who believes nothing is waste until it's wasted. So let's not waste any more time. Joining me now is Nitin Gupta, founder and CEO of Attero. Thank you so much for joining us and speaking with us, Nitin.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Nitin, let's go back to 2008 when you had your laptop moment. Was it a moment that you fell in love with what you had, or was it something that frustrated you enough to spawn a business empire?
Well, looking back in history, in 2008, it was a problem that was pointed out by Rohan, who's my co-founder. He, at that point in time, was working in SAP Labs, Bangalore. He had an old laptop, which he didn't know what to do with. So it started out as an environmental concern. And when we dug deeper, we did realize that using the right technology and business model, we can not only create a significant impact on the environment and society, but also build a big financial business out of it, right? And that's the core DNA of the company that you started, Attero, technology and sustainability.
But at that point in time, who was talking about what to do with an old laptop? I mean, what was the business case for it in 2008?
Business case was simple. India is a growing economy, right? There is significant amount of electronic waste being generated. It's a completely informal market. So can we revolutionize it and make it more formal, right? And if you recall, back in 2008, majority of the businesses that were starting were basically looking at unorganized, disorganized sectors and looking to organize them using technology. This was one of the cases very similar to those.
So you have 46 global patents. Tell us what is the deep tech behind your work? Because, we just had our minister say that our startups are not doing deep tech. They do very simplistic stuff. They may be unicorns, but where's the technology? So tell us what the technology is, how you would explain it to, say, a dadi or a 12-year-old.
Yeah, well, a 12-year-old or a dadi are very smart, right? But having said that, essentially, if you look at it, there is significant technology across the board in Attero. Let's first speak about recycling. In recycling various kinds of metals or scrap or electronic waste or lithium-ion batteries, you have different kinds of mechanical recycling processes, chemical recycling processes, and metallurgical recycling processes. Each one of them have significant innovation in terms of how do you sort of do that process or step to ensure maximum recovery at the lowest cost possible in the most environmentally friendly manner possible, right? Apart from this, there is a lot of tech behind both the collection platforms, Mandi and SellSmart, which use an AI-based pricing engine to make sure that the customers or the vendors there get the most transparent and fair pricing possible, right? So if you were to sort of peel the onion there, and let's look about technology, and very simple example. Let's say lithium carbonate is recovered using a process called precipitation, and that happens in our production plants also. So precipitation is fairly simple. You have this glass of water, sugar is dissolved in it. You want to displace sugar with salt, okay? Now, sugar has a displacement limit. Only so much sugar you can displace. Then what do? You basically heat it. Once you heat it, the displacement limit increases. Similarly, in lithium carbonate, the displacement limit is 50% or precipitation limit is 50%. So we have modified the operating conditions of the precipitation reaction, which include temperature, pressure, and so on and so forth, to bring that to 98%. Now, it might look very simple given how I'm explaining it, but there's a lot of chemical technology behind this, right? I'll give you another example. If you look at your mobile phone or your laptop or any electronic device, the brain of the device is the printed circuit board or the motherboard, right? Now, how is the printed circuit board manufactured? It's a multi-layer copper board with different kinds of plastic layers in between, and then different components like a capacitor, an inductor, and IC are soldered on top of it, right? Now, if you look at the PCB board, almost 42% of that is plastics or more, okay? In India, the informal sector uses coal-based furnaces and uses lead as a collector metal, right? And their ratio is 1:5. Their recovery efficiency is 75%. In Attero's case, what we decided to do as part of innovation is not to put the entire PCB into the smelter. We introduced a mechanical pre-processing step, which we have patented. It's using a machine called CRM, component removal machine. You put the PCB in there. Using a mechanical and a thermal action, you're able to separate out components and the board, right? And then you're able to separate out high precious metal, medium and low. So the medium and low precious metal are fed into the pulverizer. Basically, you're upgrading the grade of the precious metal. So what you're feeding into a smelter is a much smaller fraction by weight of what everybody else does, right? That enables us to reduce that 1:10 or 1:5 to 1:0.45. Basically 20 times reduction of collector metal requirement, while keeping our output efficiencies higher to 98%. Right? That's another innovation, right? And similarly, I can go on and on about various kinds of innovation that you've done there.
All right. So you spoke about the high recovery rate. You also spoke about how you source. I mean, perhaps it's a marketplace. Is it a marketplace? Then what about the other things? Like you said, you really started with the environment. So are you also earning carbon credits? And, could you tell me if there's one piece of tech that you feel the most proud about all the things that you're doing, what would it be?
So there's no one piece of tech. One piece of, let's say, DNA is innovation. So everything that we have done over our journey over the last 12 odd years, and we continue to do that every day, is innovation, right? So whether it is finding the best solution for electronic waste recycling, whether it is then looking at expanding the funnel to include lithium-ion batteries, and then finding the best solution for lithium-ion batteries. And just on that point, if you look at globally, in the last, let's say, 24 months, close to around $5 billion have been deployed in equity in lithium-ion battery recycling. Majority of that capital has gone to US and China. Today, Attero's tech is far better than any of these global guys. Our recovery efficiencies for pure battery-grade lithium carbonate, nickel, graphite, manganese is more than 97%. Global numbers are less than 75. So for the same material, we're recovering almost 30% more revenue, Our capex per ton is lower by 40% compared to anybody else. And this is an apples to apples comparison. The facility that you're putting up in Europe and US, that's those numbers, right? Our OPEX per ton is lower, right? So even with much lower R&D budgets, we've been able to achieve a global path-breaking technology from that perspective, right? So one thing that at least I value at Attero is this innovation culture. We continue to innovate on technology, we continue to innovate on business models, and we continue to innovate on supply chain as well. Part of the result is what you see in Metal Mandi and SellSmart as well, right? So nobody told us to do digital, but what we realized is the entire supply chain is broken and we need to do something about it.
All right. So let's talk about SellSmart. Now, how do you get Indian households to sell their old phones to a platform because they only, they want an exchange, or they think ki kabaad to kabadi wala hi le jata hai. So what did you learn from SellSmart when it comes to people's habits, their trust, and the data anxiety? And how do you position recycling to people who don't think that, waste is bad?
So you'll be surprised, at least in my opinion and whatever data we have seen. First of all, Indians love value, right? So nothing in our households is wasted.
We don't waste anything. We reuse everything. We recycle everything.
We get paid for it. So the concept of getting paid for scrap is very well ingrained in our brains and our hearts, right? That I don't think we have to teach or we have to sort of educate or do anything around that. Obviously, the entire returns mechanism in the country is broken, right? So look at your own example. If you have to return a television or exchange it, essentially, let's say if you go to any sort of big format stores or even an online store or the brand store, they will give you the voucher for exchange, but the local kabadi wala will come and pick it up from your house and sell it in the local market, right? And the supply chain that works for the scrap market is the kabadi wala picks up from your house, he gives it to a local aggregator. The local aggregator is sort of funding working capital, okay? The local aggregator collects a certain volume, sells it to a larger aggregator. Larger aggregator is still funding working capital. The larger aggregator will take out whatever is working. For example, from air conditioner, the compressor is working. It will be taken out and sold. The remaining stuff will be sold to people who then use cyanide and sulfuric acid or open coal burning to extract gold, silver, and copper, right? Majority of the people working in the last leg of informal recycling are women and children. All the people working in the first leg of collections are males, right? Majority of the money is earned by these two trader communities, okay? You'll be surprised to know the average lifespan of people working in the informal illegal recycling industry, less than 27 years.
27 years?
Less than 27. They're exposed to all kinds of cyanide fumes, lead fumes, all kinds of water pollution without PPE equipment, right? Now, if you look at the supply chain, technology that Attero sort of developed for recycling can only be effective from an impact perspective if you bring that to a supply chain innovation as well, right? From a consumer angle, today, you know that you need to get value for waste, that we don't need to convince you, right? But you need convenience from your home. You need to ensure that the waste that you're giving away is not environmentally degrading the society or the country, right? That value CellSmart brings to the table, okay? So CellSmart brings you three different things. Convenience of giving your waste from your home, best prices in the market, experience which is unparalleled and unmatched. On top of it, data security. Today, when you're giving up your, let's say, devices, there's significant amount of financial legal data in it, right? You don't know what happens. With CellSmart, that sort of problem is taken away from.
So now your tagline is Materials Reborn. So can you tell me what is this Material Reborn? Is this a reincarnation theory, or what's the logic behind this whole tagline? And how do you think India should strategically position itself to be able to source these critical raw materials that it is self-sufficient in a way that doesn't necessarily have to follow the script which has been written so far?
Yeah, so very important question. So at least from our perspective, we did a very elaborate branding exercise where all of us got together and said, how do we look at the company, right? So there are many sort of thought processes came out from there. One was, can we stop mining, okay? And why do we want to stop mining? Well, mining is among the most polluted activities on planet Earth today. Yes. The amount of water consumption, the amount of, let's say, soil degradation, the amount of chemicals that are used, it's pretty bad. Couple of examples.
And I think even the recovery rate in critical raw materials is also not very high.
Not very high today, right? So if you look at an example, a typical lithium mine, to extract, let's say, 1 ton of lithium carbonate equivalent, you require more than 500,000 gallons of water. You can imagine the kind of water scarcity that brings to the table, right? So when we looked at it, we said there is a huge amount of resource available, which is lying on top of the earth, which is the materials that we've been using. If we can collect them, we can recycle them in the most environmentally friendly manner. All of them can be fed back into the circular economy. And the beauty of these materials is they don't go bad. You can basically recycle copper or gold or lithium or cobalt infinite times. Nothing happens, right? So that's where Materials Reborn was born, that instead of just sort of dumping them, collect them, give value to the users who are using them till now, make sure that they're processed properly, and put them back in circular economy and reduce that much more mining.
Right. Yeah, but this whole premise is then dependent on getting your back-end logistics done, that you are able to get it, like CellSmart consumers again, but you need a more wider way of sourcing all of this. And this is where Metal Mandi comes in. Is this an endeavor so that your back-end is clear, or is this an endeavor to get more people into the system so that even the smaller players benefit? Because like you mentioned, I mean, the front end and the lowest back end, they have such low lifespan. They're not even earning that much. So what is the idea behind Metals Mandi?
So the idea is fairly simple. Obviously, getting more and more people involved is sort of one factor or one vector there. But the idea is supply chain innovation, right? And making sure the supply chain is more robust. On top of it, the basic thing is that the aggregator chain that I sort of described to you, the guy who's collecting or the local aggregator, they're not getting a fair price for their material that they're selling, right? So the idea of Metal Mandi is to offer all the people in the supply chain a fair pricing and a transparent pricing. Today, a scrap dealer sitting in Lucknow, let's say compared to a scrap dealer sitting in Visakhapatnam, right? Versus somebody sitting in Delhi, the price is different.
But the waste is the same.
Waste is the same, price is different. There's no transparency in the supply chain because traders and middlemen control it, right? So Metal Mandi is essentially saying, wherever you are in the country, we will offer you very, very transparent and fair pricing and we'll pick it up from your house. The advantage to Attero for that is that we get a very robust supply chain, right? But we can only do it if we democratize the entire ecosystem, and that's what you're trying to do.
With metal.
Yeah. Also, very important to understand the pricing engine that you've been speaking about behind this. Right now, on Metal Mandi, there are almost today 1 lakh categories of scrap. Every type of scrap is basically priced. Let's say, look at a washing machine, right? An LG manufactured washing machine in 2014 will have a different content of gold, silver, copper, aluminum, iron. A Samsung washing machine manufactured in 2015 will have a different content of gold, silver, copper, and aluminum, right? How do you price it? So essentially on Metal Mandi and SellSmart, at the back end, there's a pricing engine that's running that today collects the London Metal Exchange pricing of all of these metals, predicts the Indian M6 price. Indian M6 is the Indian Metal Exchange, then predicts the local metal price. Those are different because of GST and local supply demand, and then compares to a database of various kinds of scrap, and then combines and throws out a price. The prices are updated multiple times a day, right? And that's the key backbone of the Metal Mandi platform as well.
All right. So, Metal Mandi is a great idea, and it, and more people get onto it, they will see more transparent pricing and better outcomes for them. But for a country as a whole, how do we organize recycling in our country? See, कबाड़ी वाले अपना काम करते हैं. हमारे देश में we already have a culture of recycling, of reducing waste, unlike some of the Western countries. But how to get more people in an industry that is becoming regularized with perhaps a little bit of predictable income as well? What will need to be done? Do you need to pay recyclers more? How do you formalize this space, and what role does the government have there?
So government, I think, has been pretty proactive. If you look at the government has come out with a very stringent EPR policy as well, which is extended producer responsibility.
Which is something which is followed globally.
Which is followed globally. In Europe, it's been there for the last 20 odd years. And the prices under EPR in Europe have been increasing every year. So if you see the price trend that the producers pay for recyclers in Europe, the price trend is positive, right? In India, the EPR policy first came into picture in 2012, where it was voluntarily compliance.
Not taken very seriously.
Not taken very seriously, right? So no producer essentially wanted to do anything. And then the government actually made it mandatory compliance in 2016. Still nobody did anything. Then the checking of EPR compliance was handed over to customs. So as an OEM, you could not import a product or a subassembly or a component without EPR compliance. That's when a lot of OEMs started taking it seriously. And since then, the government of India has continued to make these rules more and more stringent. So back in 2019, it was 30 products covered under EPR. Then they made it 100 products. Then they introduced a platform for trading of these EPR certificates as well. And now they've introduced a minimum floor pricing, right? Which is in contention in the courts because some OEMs have opposed it. But as things stand today, the government of India's policies are pretty proactive and in favor of the recycling community, which is basically intended to make sure that the informal recycling moves to formal recycling.
But do you see large business groups having an interest in this? Because the market is there. Or do you think it will be somehow a collection of the informal only becoming formalized on their own?
No. It's a combination of both. Supply chain will change from informal to formal, which is happening rapidly as we speak. And more large business groups in India are sort of investing big money behind it. So look at it from a different perspective. Today, India is a net importer of almost every single metal, right? Start from precious metals to, let's say, critical metals to base metals. But as the formal economy is growing and as more and more waste streams enter the formal economy, there is a secondary scrap available, right? With more predictability and more transparency, right? So if you look at the Adani Group has put $1 billion capex behind copper, right? Where they're saying they'll start to make copper sort of finished products in the country. Part of that input will come from secondary supply chain. Part of the input will come from primary supply chain. Okay. Similarly, Hindalco has put in almost a 4,000 crore capex behind aluminium. Similar concept. Tata Steel has put more than $1 billion capex behind sort of collecting scrap iron, mixing it with the virgin steel production and selling as green steel, right? So large business groups are already pretty active in this space over the last, let's say, 1 to 2 years.
All right. So what do you call this recycled mineral? You're calling it green metals, cobalt, lithium, gold. How are they green? And I mean, if they are green, will they be more expensive? And how do you see your company, shaping the global conversation around recycling and greening these metals?
So why green is fairly simple. Let's say the environmental cost of recycling any metal, you pick a metal, gold, silver, copper, platinum, palladium, cobalt, lithium carbonate, is much lower than the environmental cost of mining them, which includes the water consumption, the chemicals that are used, the effluents that come out, soil degradation, any of those, right? Specific to Attero, we recently got a GHG study done, which is greenhouse gas emission. Let's say the lithium carbonate that we produce is 99% lower GHG footprint than what comes out of China. The graphite that we produce is 98% lower GHG footprint than what comes out of China. The copper that we produce is 68% lower footprint, GHG footprint than what comes out of mining, and so on and so forth. I can go on and on and on, right? But I hope you get the sense there. That's the reason we're saying it's a green metal. It's not coming out by mining the earth. We're not digging the earth to use this metal, right? It's all coming from waste, and it is getting converted into a usable form, which can then be used back in the supply chain. Obviously, over a period of time, from a market perspective, people can pay more for green metal, right? That's a marketing and branding exercise. But let's say from a consumer standpoint, the cost of green metal should be similar to the cost of regular metals as well, right? We would obviously love to get more premium on it, and hopefully we'll get it one day. But from a cost perspective, the OPEX is same.
OPEX is the same.
OPEX is the same.
Okay.
Right. Global conversation.
What should be the global conversation regarding recycling in the circular economy?
Well, global conversation is already pretty proactive today. If you talk to people in the US or Europe, this is being treated as the pillar next to mining to make sure self-dependence on critical raw materials and not dependence on, let's say, any geopolitical party like China. Right, so that's a very strong
and
conversation.
We've already seen it in COVID when the supply chain broke. What a bad time we had.
Absolutely. So if you look at the US and Europe, they have put significant, let's say, efforts behind it. So in the US, Department of Energy has put in like almost $50 to $100 billion capital behind it, saying that if you can sort of set up these recycling or refining projects in the US, they'll fund all of these to a significant level. In Europe, the government has put some taxation behind stuff coming from China in a particular industry, right? So they are trying to put incentive as well as disincentive policy there. How Attero is shaping that conversation? Attero is the only player in the critical minerals refining piece that has carbon credits, that generates carbon credits globally, right? Attero is the only player with the best technology. So we are in part of, or in sort of conversations with global players to set up our plants in US and Europe. So that's how we are trying to shape this conversation. We believe that over a period of time, let's say in the next 5 years, we should be able to meet at least 10% of the world's cobalt requirement through recycling. By Attero.
Wow.
Okay? That's what our sort of dream and ambition is.
And that's great. What do you think a truly circular economy in India would look like? What would you like to see? And should we be borrowing from another country or a culture on how to be circular, or will we chart out our own path here?
See, well, from a culture perspective, we have a very rich history and culture, right? We always have been circular from time immemorial, right? So I don't think we need to borrow. If we look back, we'll find that our forefathers and foremothers were pretty proactive in how they managed the environment, how they managed the waste, and how the entire economy was circular and domestic, and within domestic, regional, right? Now that has changed for the good, but we need to get some things back from the roots and use it back again today. Truly circular India essentially is if you're able to collect all waste, recycle it, meet a certain percentage of the demand of new materials by doing this, right? And also make India the recycling hub for the world. That will create jobs, that will create GDP. Obviously, this is assuming that the Indian environment doesn't get hurt by sort of importing scrap and recycling it in India. Only those companies who are able to sort of do a good job of the environmental protection should be allowed to do so. But this will ensure that we are able to meet 100% of our materials without mining. So truly circular India will be in India where there is zero mining. Truly circular India will be in India where there is zero dependency on imports of any material that we need, right? And we'll get there very soon.
All right, you're very hopeful on that. Let's hope we see some change in end consumer behavior also, where they, reduce their waste or recycle or upcycle as much as they can, and they continue doing that, because the easier way out is just to throw. And let's hope that mindset also changes. Thanks so much for speaking with us. Next time you buy gold, there's a real chance that it's not coming from a mine, but from a discarded phone or battery, recovered through a process pioneered by Nitin Gupta and his team. And just like that, without even realizing it, you'd become part of the circular economy. What began in 2008 as a personal frustration, the simple act of not knowing how to dispose an old laptop has turned into an enterprise with 46 patents, cutting-edge R&D, and the ability to recover high-purity metals at remarkable efficiency. But beyond the numbers and technologies, Attero is creating a model for sustainable wealth where waste becomes opportunity and recycling powers the next wave of innovation. Attero isn't just cleaning up the past, it's designing the future of the circular economy. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again very soon.